ALWDs, this is an abbreviation that I will use to address adolescents with disabilities, adolescents living with disabilities. So the menstrual pattern for both people with disabilities and female individuals without disabilities is the same. There's no any differences in their menstrual cycle. Also, the sanitary pads and washing of the genital areas is very essential in the promotion of menstrual hygiene during their periods. So studies have revealed that most adolescents with disabilities face issues with dealing with their cycles among themselves and also to their caretakers. And most of the issues that bother them include the issues of embarrassment, issues with privacy, and dealing with flow and anxiety, and also confusion due to insufficient knowledge. So due to these factors, it leads to unhygienic practices, which increase the risk for pelvic inflammatory diseases and urinary tract infection, as well as other complications. So in our literature review, we did a review of various literature about good menstrual hygiene and management practices among adolescents living with disabilities, and the country that had the best practice was the US, with good practices at 76%, and the country where we found lowest prevalence of good practices in menstrual hygiene among adolescents with disability was India at 43.1. Studies in Africa were able to obtain 2 papers, one from Ethiopia, which had 60.9% of good practices, and the other one from South Africa, which was at 53%. But we couldn't obtain any paper from Tanzania that was specific in addressing the issues of menstrual hygiene in adolescents with disabilities. So adolescents with disabilities have a lot of issues dealing with their puberty and menstruation because they have an added layer of disability. And usually the menstruation and puberty is a difficult issue for all adolescents. So with them, it's more difficult because of their perceived inabilities and helplessness during this period. So this problem, they complicate their balance in their lives. So there's an issue of missing classes and an issue of low scores in school due to the complication that they face. They have this double layer of difficulty. So once menarche occurs, these adolescents may have physical changes that, due to their physical challenges, they may experience additional difficulties in managing their period. So for this study, our broad objective was to assess the knowledge and practice of menstrual hygiene among the adolescents with disabilities at one primary school in Moshi, and our specific objective was to assess their knowledge of menstrual hygiene before their first onset of their period, and also to assess the sources where they receive information on menstrual hygiene, as well as the methods of hygiene that they employ during their menses. In our methodology, this was a school-based cross-sectional study done at Urban Moshi in a school called Mwereni. This is an integrated primary school for the blind, and it's located about 7 minutes from the Moshi bus terminal. So our study population was female students at the school, ranging with ages ranging between 10 to 16 years. And our inclusion criteria were adolescents with disabilities at that school from ages of 10 and above, and also those who consented to participate in our study. So our exclusion criteria were the girls that we found to be unfit to participate in the interview, and as well as the ones who withdrew their consent. So our sampling technique was purposive sampling. We did an probability sampling because we had an issue of a small sample size, and we had a total sample size of 29 students. Our data collection and analysis, so we used the questionnaire. We adapted this questionnaire from a similar study done in Ethiopia, and we used it to collect information for this study. And then we entered data to the computer, and we used analysis with the SPSS Windows version 20. So in our results, these are the social demographic characteristics of the population that we studied, we divided the age category between those less than 12 years of age, which 15 girls, and ages greater than 12 years of age, which was a total of 14, which is equivalent to 48.3%. And religious-wise, majority of our study population were Christian at 75.9%, and Muslim at 20.7%. And other was just 0.3%. This 44 is an error. Also, grading, 12 girls were less than standard 4, and 17 girls were studying above standard 4 of primary education. So our findings, 75.9 of the respondents had a generally good knowledge of menstrual hygiene, and 72.4% of the girls received this knowledge before their first period. And of the 9 girls that already started their menstrual cycle, 55.5% had good practice of menstrual hygiene. And these were the sources of information that they got about menstrual hygiene management, with 61.9 of the girls receiving information from their mothers and the teachers. And these teachers were female teachers. No student reported having information about menstrual hygiene from male teachers. Also, 57.6 reported having this information from their friends, and at 35.2% of the girls reported getting information from different mass media outlets. So in our discussion, we found that the knowledge on menstrual hygiene for these girls was fairly well in comparison to other similar studies, and we think this is because we had a small sample size, so it couldn't reflect the correct statistic of their knowledge on menstrual hygiene. Also the practice was low, and this is due to lack of information, that most girls reported that they didn't have appropriate information on how to deal with their periods. Also, we observed that all girls had information on the good practices of menstrual hygiene from their mothers, as well as their female teachers, and we think that this is attributed to our cultural attitudes, where the issue of periods is a female-only issue. So it reflects the gender inequality that exists in our society. Our conclusions and recommendations is that it's essential to have a knowledge on good practices of menstrual hygiene, especially among adolescents living with disabilities. And us as an organization, that's what we are engaged in. So we usually go to schools and we gather information on what they know, and then we try to fill in the missing gaps. Also, we recommend that health education programs should be set up to provide more knowledge, that is sexual and reproductive health knowledge that is catered to adolescents living with disabilities. Here are our references, and here is a brief photo of the girls at the school. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Anyone who has any question or comment?
So thank you so much, Doctor, for a very informative presentation. That's very interesting. So one is a comment. I'll start with the question. So the question is, the small proportion of the girls who were not informed by their parents or guardians. Like you have some small proportion of girls who informed their friends. Do you know why they didn't? I mean, like, do you have any information why they gathered information from their friends and they didn't get it from their parents? When ideally you're supposed to get that information from them.
Yes, this was a boarding school. So some girls over there reported from the school, directly from centers that take care of girls with disabilities. So when they reached school age, they just went to the school and started studying there. So they didn't have enough interaction with their parents, and they are bound to the school. So we think for that sample of the girls, they are the ones who didn't get the information direct from the parents, and some also report that their parents just didn't tell them. So we think that maybe there's this prevailing assumption that girls with disabilities maybe don't undergo same changes as the other girls without disabilities. But that is what we are just attributing it to.
Thank you. I think that was my second comment. Sanjay.
Thank you for your nice presentation. I just wanted a bit of clarification. On one of your exclusion criteria, you mentioned girls who were unfit. So I would like to understand unfit on what level, based on what, or in what sense. Thank you.
We basically had this criteria based on their physical health status. So from our own observation of them. Because most of the girls, but we couldn't find anyone who was physically unfit for this. But we just kept that because we didn't want to disturb them, because we had to explain it to them, and we had to select girls that were physically able to understand what we were saying and were willing to participate in the study. So we just kept it in case we found someone who had maybe physical impairments that would interfere with their participation in the questionnaires.
Congratulations on the good presentation, and I have noted that you say that this is the first from Tanzania. Congratulations on that as well. My name is Neema Dashina from Harvard Kairuki, and my question is on the adolescents living with disabilities, specifically mental disabilities. Now, it's easier for a person who is mentally fit to understand menses, but what about a girl who's not mentally fit? How does she get to understand that these are menses and this is how I'm supposed to handle the menses? Thank you.
Thank you for your good question. So currently, we haven't yet started to take similar studies among girls with mental disabilities, but in our literature review, we found, because we were only focused with physical and sensory disabilities, because these girls had, most had either partial or total blindness and had various other physical disabilities. But in terms of mental disabilities, we only have insights from the literature that we have reviewed. So we found that there's usually, it's an even more challenging group. So there are various aspects of management that they usually do to girls with mental disabilities. And they range from counseling sessions to total hysterectomies. So it depends with their degree of how much mental disability do they have. But that is just from the literature that we reviewed.
Thank you for answering the questions. I hope you're satisfied. Thank you for the presentation. So I'm going to clap for him as he's ready to receive. Yeah, so